The morning air on Kepler Station buzzed with nervous energy as recruits lined up for their final shooting assessment. Sarah Chen wiped sweat from her palms, watching the alien instructors move between the rows of nervous humans. The Vakari looked like walking lizards with their green scales and yellow eyes, but they commanded respect throughout the galaxy as the finest military trainers. "Today determines your placement," announced Commander Zess, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. "Those who pass join the Galactic Defense Forces. Those who fail return to Earth with their tails between their legs." Sarah grimaced at the comment. The Vakari always made jokes about humans having tails, even though they knew perfectly well humans didn't have any. It was their way of reminding everyone that humans were the newest species in the Galactic Alliance, barely accepted after decades of proving themselves worthy. The shooting range stretched out before them, a massive facility carved into the asteroid's core. Holographic targets materialized at various distances, some stationary, others moving in complex patterns. Each recruit would face the same test that had challenged every warrior species for the past 1,000 years. "Chen, Sarah," barked Instructor Krex, his claws clicking against his datapad. "You're up next." Sarah's heart hammered as she approached the weapon station. The other recruits had been using standard plasma rifles, the kind she'd trained with for months, but as she reached for her assigned weapon, Krex pulled it back. "Not so fast, human," he hissed, amusement dancing in his reptilian eyes. "Your species thinks it's so special, so adaptable. Let's see how you handle a real challenge." He handed her a rifle that looked wrong immediately. The weight felt off, and when she tried to check the charge indicator, nothing lit up. She pulled back the charging handle and heard the telltale grinding sound of jammed internal mechanisms. "Sir, this weapon appears to be malfunctioning," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady despite the snickers from alien observers in the gallery above. "Is it?" Krex tilted his head mockingly. "Or perhaps humans simply aren't as clever as they claim. You have 10 minutes to complete the course. The clock starts now." Sarah stared at the rifle in her hands as the timer began counting down. Around her, she could hear whispers in various alien languages. The Vakari had clearly set her up to fail, probably to make an example of human inadequacy. She'd heard stories about this happening to other species when they first joined the Alliance. But Sarah hadn't come this far to give up now. Growing up in the Detroit ruins, she'd learned to fix broken machines with nothing but spare parts and determination. Her father had been an engineer before the resource wars, and he'd taught her that every machine had a logic to it, a way it wanted to work. She knelt down and began field stripping the rifle with practiced movements. The other recruits had stopped to watch, their own tests forgotten. Even the Vakari instructors leaned forward, curious to see what the human would do. The rifle's internal components were a mess. Someone had deliberately sabotaged it, jamming the energy conduits and misaligning the focusing crystals. It would have taken significant effort to break it this thoroughly while making it look accidental. 8 minutes remaining, Krex announced, satisfaction clear in his voice. Sarah's hands moved quickly, her mind racing through possible solutions. The standard approach would require tools she didn't have and time she couldn't spare. But there might be another way, something the Vakari wouldn't expect from a primitive human. She remembered her father's words about thinking outside the box. The rifle was designed for plasma energy, but energy was energy. She pulled out her personal communicator and began disconnecting its power cell. "What is she doing?" She heard someone whisper in the gallery. The communicator's battery was designed for low-power electronics, not weapons. But if she could bypass the rifle's damaged power regulation systems and jury-rig a direct connection, she might be able to get enough juice for a few shots. Working with the delicacy of a surgeon, Sarah spliced wires from her communicator into the rifle's power input. The voltage would be wrong, the amperage unstable, but it might work long enough to complete the test. 5 minutes, Krex called out, though his voice had lost some of its earlier smugness. Sarah reassembled the rifle with her improvised power source. The weapon felt even more awkward now, with her communicator duct-taped to the side, but the charge indicator flickered weakly to life. She stood and raised the rifle, sighting down the range at the holographic targets. The weapon's balance was completely off now, and she had no idea how many shots her jury-rigged power source would provide. The first target appeared at 50 meters. Sarah squeezed the trigger and felt the rifle buck violently in her hands. The plasma bolt flew wide, but the weapon had fired. The gallery erupted in surprised chatter. She adjusted her grip and aimed at the second target. This time she compensated for the weapon's new balance point. The shot connected, vaporizing the hologram in a shower of light. Impossible, someone muttered in the gallery. Target after target materialized, some close, some distant, some moving in erratic patterns. Sarah found her rhythm, learning to work with the damaged rifle rather than against it. Each shot was a gamble. She never knew if it would be her last before the improvised power source gave out. The timer showed 2 minutes remaining when the moving targets began appearing. These were the hardest part of the test, requiring precise timing and prediction. Sarah tracked a fast-moving hologram, led it by instinct, and fired. Direct hit. The gallery had gone completely silent now. Even the Vakari instructors watched with what might have been respect. With 30 seconds left, the final challenge appeared. 3 targets at maximum range, moving in a complex weaving pattern. Most recruits needed the full power of a functioning rifle to even reach these targets, let alone hit them. Sarah's improvised power source was failing. The charge indicator barely registered, and she could smell burning electronics from her communicator. She had maybe 3 shots left. She took a deep breath, blocked out everything else, and became one with the broken rifle in her hands. 3 quick shots, each one drawing from the last dregs of power in her jury-rigged system. All 3 targets vanished. The timer hit 0 just as smoke began rising from her destroyed communicator. Sarah lowered the rifle and looked up at the gallery, where dozens of alien faces stared back at her in stunned silence. Commander Zess was the first to speak, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been admiration. "Interesting," he said. "Very interesting indeed." The debriefing room felt smaller than it should have, with Commander Zess and 3 other Vakari officers seated across from Sarah. The broken rifle lay on the table between them, her destroyed communicator still duct-taped to its side like a bizarre mechanical parasite. "Explain your methodology," said Officer Vash, her yellow eyes fixed intently on Sarah. She was the station's technical specialist, and her scales showed the darker patterns that indicated advanced age and experience. Sarah straightened in her chair. The rifle's primary power coupling was severed, and the plasma conduits were deliberately misaligned. Standard field repair would have required specialized tools in at least 20 minutes. I needed an alternative power source that could bypass the damaged regulation systems. "And you chose to cannibalize your personal communicator," Commander Zess observed. "That device was your only means of contacting your ship or requesting assistance." "Yes, sir." The mission parameters were clear. Complete the course using the assigned weapon. I interpreted that as solving the problem with available resources. Officer Vash leaned forward. "The voltage differential between your communicator's power cell and the rifle's requirements should have caused catastrophic feedback. The weapon should have exploded in your hands," Sarah nodded. "I calculated that risk, ma'am. But I noticed the rifle's internal capacitors were still functional. I used them as voltage buffers, cycling power through them to smooth out the energy delivery. It was inefficient, but it worked long enough to complete the test." The Vakari officers exchanged glances, speaking briefly in their native language. Sarah caught a few words. Her linguistic training had covered basic Vakari military terminology. They were discussing something about adaptation protocols and evolutionary markers. "Tell me, Chen," said Commander Zess, switching back to standard. "Did you know the rifle was sabotaged?" "I suspected it immediately, sir. The damage pattern was too uniform to be accidental, and the placement of the brakes would have required someone with detailed knowledge of Vakari weapon systems." "And yet you said nothing during the test." Sarah considered her words carefully. "With respect, sir, complaining about unfair conditions wouldn't have changed anything. Every species that joins the Alliance faces these kinds of tests. The question isn't whether they're fair, it's whether we can adapt and overcome." Another exchange in Vakari followed. This time Sarah caught more words. Traditional responses and baseline expectations. Officer Vash seemed to be arguing something while the others listened. "Most species," Vash said finally, "respond to equipment failure in predictable ways. The Thorani would have demanded a replacement weapon. The Kelish would have attempted to complete the course without firing a single shot, using evasion and stealth. The Zephyrians would have disassembled the rifle completely, analyzing every component before attempting repairs. "What makes humans different?" asked another officer, one Sarah didn't recognize. We improvise, Sarah said simply. We take whatever's available and make it work, even if it's not supposed to. My father used to say that the universe doesn't care about your plans, so you'd better be good at making new ones. Commander Zess stood and walked to the room's viewport, which showed the asteroid field where Kepler Station made its home. Your species has been part of the Alliance for only 15 years. Most civilizations require centuries to develop the tactical flexibility we've observed in human forces. Maybe it's because we've had to fight for everything, Sarah replied. Earth wasn't exactly a paradise when we made first contact. We'd already been through resource wars, climate disasters, and social collapse. We learned to adapt because the alternative was extinction. The Thorani homeworld is a volcanic hellscape, Officer Vash pointed out. The Kalish evolved in Arctic conditions that would kill most species. Environmental pressure alone doesn't explain human adaptability. Sarah thought about that. It's not just the environment, ma'am. It's how we think about problems. Most species seem to have one right way to do things passed down through traditions and protocols. Humans, we've always had to figure things out for ourselves. We had thousands of separate cultures on one planet, each finding different solutions to the same problems. The unnamed officer made a note on his datapad. Genetic diversity leading to cognitive flexibility. An interesting hypothesis. There's more to it than that, Sarah continued, warming to the subject. We're social learners, but we're also individualistic. We share knowledge freely, but we also encourage people to think differently, to challenge established methods. It makes us chaotic, but it also makes us adaptable. Commander Zess turned back to the group. Your performance today has raised some interesting questions, Chen. The rifle you repaired shouldn't have been capable of hitting those final targets. The power output was insufficient, the barrel harmonics were completely wrong, and the targeting system was non-functional. I had to compensate manually for all of that, sir. I used the rifle's backup iron sights and estimated the ballistic drop based on the reduced muzzle velocity. At 300 meters, with a jury-rigged power source providing irregular energy output, Sarah shrugged. I've done worse with hunting rifles back home. It's just a matter of reading the weapon and adjusting your technique. Another Vakari conversation followed, this one more animated. Sarah caught references to baseline testing protocols and species classification reviews. Whatever they were discussing, it seemed to be important. Chen, said Officer Vash eventually, how many shots do you estimate you could have made with your improvised power source? Maybe 5 or 6, ma'am. The communicator's battery was rated for 48 hours of standard operation, but direct feeding it into a plasma rifle created massive inefficiencies. I was surprised it lasted as long as it did. You fired 11 shots during the test. Sarah blinked. That doesn't seem right. I remember firing more than 5 or 6 times. The officers exchanged those meaningful looks again. Commander Zess pulled up a holographic display showing the test recording. Computer replay shot 6 through 11. The hologram showed Sarah's performance from an overhead angle. Shot 6 hit a moving target at medium range. Shot 7 took down a distant stationary target. Shots 8 through 11 were the final sequence. 3 moving targets at maximum range, plus what looked like a 4th shot that had somehow disabled all 3 targets simultaneously. I don't understand, Sarah said, staring at the replay. That last shot. It looks like the plasma bolt split somehow. Plasma doesn't split, Officer Vash said quietly. It dissipates or maintains cohesion, but it doesn't fragment into multiple projectiles. Unless, said Commander Zess, the weapon experiences catastrophic containment failure at the exact moment of firing, creating a controlled explosion that projects multiple energy bursts in a precise pattern. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Sir, are you saying I turned a rifle malfunction into an improvised shotgun blast? We're saying, replied the unnamed officer, that you instinctively weaponized a critical system failure in real time during combat conditions, using principles of plasma physics that most weapons engineers don't fully understand. The room fell silent. Sarah stared at the holographic replay, watching her impossible final shot destroy 3 targets with what should have been catastrophic equipment failure. What happens now? She asked finally. Commander Zess smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Now, Chen, we find out just how far human adaptability can be pushed. 3 weeks later, Sarah found herself in a classified section of Kepler Station she'd never known existed. The corridors here were wider, built to accommodate the massive Thorani and the multi-limbed Arachnidi species. Security checkpoints required biometric scans from 3 different body parts, and the guards carried weapons she didn't recognize. "This is the Advanced Tactical Research Division," explained Dr. Yilan as they walked. She was human, maybe 40 years old, with graying hair and the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing too much classified material. "We study combat applications of unusual phenomena. Your little demonstration with the plasma rifle caught some very important attention." They passed laboratories where humans and aliens worked side by side on projects that made Sarah's head spin. In one room, a Kellish engineer was testing weapons that fired crystallized time. In another, a human technician calibrated something called a probability cannon that apparently shot statistical outcomes instead of physical projectiles. "Dr. Yilan," Sarah said carefully, "I just fixed a broken rifle. I'm not sure why that qualifies as unusual phenomena." "That's exactly why it's unusual," Dr. Yilan replied, stopping at a reinforced door marked with symbols Sarah didn't recognize. "Every other species has limits to their problem-solving approaches. Vakari are methodical. They follow established procedures. Thurani are powerful. They solve problems through superior force. Kellish are patient. They wait for optimal conditions. Humans? Humans do impossible things and then act surprised when people notice." The door opened to reveal a laboratory that looked more like a weapons testing range. Targets lined the far wall and various damaged weapons lay scattered across workbenches. In the center of the room stood a figure that made Sarah's breath catch. He was tall, maybe 6.5 feet, with the pale blue skin and silver hair of the ethereal collective. But instead of the flowing robes typical of his species, he wore practical work clothes stained with machine oil. His 6 arms moved independently as he disassembled what looked like a cannon, designed for something much larger than a person. "Sarah Chen," Dr. Yilan said. "Meet Master Engineer Quillis of the Ethereal Collective. He's been studying human combat adaptability for the past 5 years." Quillis looked up with eyes like liquid mercury. When he spoke, his voice carried the musical undertones characteristic of his species. "Ah, the rifle improviser. I have been most eager to meet you." "Sir?" Sarah said, not sure if she should salute or bow. The Ethereals were legendary throughout the galaxy, an ancient species with technology so advanced it seemed like magic to most other races. "Please, no formalities," Quillis said, setting down his tools. "I am a researcher, not a military officer. Tell me, have you given any thought to why your improvised weapon performed beyond its theoretical capabilities?" Sarah had been thinking about little else for 3 weeks. "I've run the calculations a dozen times. Based on the power input from my communicator, the rifle should have been able to fire maybe 3 shots at reduced power. Instead, it fired 11 shots, with the last one somehow creating multiple plasma bursts." "And what is your hypothesis?" "I don't have one that makes sense, sir. The energy just wasn't there for those additional shots." Quillis exchanged a look with Dr. Yilan. "Show her the other tests," he said. Dr. Yilan activated a wall display that showed dozens of test results. "After your performance, we began examining other instances of human combat adaptability. The results are unprecedented. The first video showed a human Marine on some distant battlefield, using a damaged tank's main gun as a handheld weapon. The cannon was easily 3 times his body weight and should have torn him apart with recoil. But somehow he was using it effectively against enemy positions." "Corporal Martinez," Dr. Yilan explained. "His squad's tank was disabled during an assault on a syndicate stronghold. Instead of falling back, he rigged the main gun for manual operation and used it to breach their fortifications." The next video showed a human pilot whose fighter had lost primary power, somehow keeping the ship operational using nothing but backup systems rated for life support. She was engaging enemy craft that should have outclassed her completely. "Lieutenant Park," said Quillis. "Her fighter's main reactor was damaged by enemy fire. Theoretical analysis indicates her backup power should have provided life support for perhaps 30 minutes. She fought for 3 hours and scored 6 confirmed kills." More videos followed. Humans using broken weapons, damaged equipment, and impossible tactics to achieve results that defied analysis. In every case, they were doing things that should have been impossible with the resources available. "We've documented over 200 similar incidents in the past 5 years, Dr. Yilan said. Humans consistently exceed the theoretical performance limits of their equipment during combat situations." Sarah stared at the display. "That doesn't make sense. Energy is energy, matter is matter. You can't create something from nothing." "Exactly. said Quillis, his mercury eyes gleaming, which brings us to our current hypothesis. He gestured to a workbench covered with various pieces of equipment. We believe humans possess an unconscious ability to manipulate quantum probability fields during high-stress situations. What does that mean in practical terms? Dr. Yilan activated another display, this one showing complex mathematical equations. Think of reality as a set of probability distributions. Most events have a certain likelihood of occurring based on physical laws. But at the quantum level, there's always some uncertainty, some possibility that things might work differently than expected. We theorize, Quillis continued, that humans can instinctively shift these probability distributions in their favor during combat. You didn't create extra energy for your rifle. You increased the probability that the available energy would be used more efficiently. Sarah felt like her brain was being turned inside out. You're saying I unconsciously altered the laws of physics? Not altered, Dr. Yilan corrected. Influenced. The laws of physics include quantum uncertainty. You're apparently able to collapse probability wave functions in beneficial ways without conscious effort. This is... Sarah sat down heavily in a nearby chair. This is insane, is it? Quillis asked gently. Your species evolved under constant pressure, facing numerous extinction events. Perhaps you developed an unconscious ability to tip the odds in your favor when survival was at stake. Other species face survival pressure too. But not like humans, Dr. Yilan said. Most species develop along predictable lines. They become stronger, faster, smarter, or more technologically advanced. Humans seem to have evolved something much more fundamental, the ability to make luck when you need it most. Sarah looked around the laboratory, at the impossible weapons and the test results that defied explanation. If this is true, if humans can really do this, why doesn't everyone know about it? Because, said Quillis, knowledge of such an ability would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Some species might see it as a threat to be eliminated. Others might try to exploit it. For now, Dr. Yilan added, this research is classified at the highest levels. Only a handful of beings in the entire Alliance know what we've discovered. Sarah thought about her father, about the ruins of Detroit, about humanity's long struggle to survive and thrive. What happens next? Quillis smiled, an expression that looked strange on his alien features. Next, Sarah Chen, we find out just how far this ability extends. And we pray that humanity learns to control it before the galaxy learns to fear it. The weight of that statement settled over Sarah like a heavy blanket. She'd come to Kepler Station to prove humans belonged in the Galactic Alliance. Instead, she'd discovered something that might change everything anyone thought they knew about her species. When do we start? She asked. The testing began immediately. Sarah's new daily routine involved scenarios that pushed the boundaries of what should be physically possible. In the morning, she worked with Master Engineer Quillis on equipment that had been deliberately sabotaged or damaged beyond normal repair. In the afternoon, Dr. Yilan ran her through combat simulations, designed to create maximum stress while monitoring her with sensors that measured things Sarah didn't pretend to understand. Today, we're trying something different, Dr. Yilan announced as Sarah entered the laboratory. 3 weeks of testing had produced results that both excited and worried the research team. Sarah could consistently make broken equipment function beyond its theoretical limits, but only when under extreme pressure. The test chamber had been reconfigured into something that looked like a small spaceship's engine room. Pipes and conduits ran along the walls, and a central console displayed what appeared to be critical system failures across multiple screens. This is a simulation of a disabled transport ship, Quillis explained, his 6 arms manipulating controls with practiced efficiency. The scenario: you're the only person aboard with engineering knowledge. Life support is failing. Communications are down and the nearest rescue ship is 8 hours away. Sarah looked at the console, taking in the cascade of warning lights and error messages. What am I supposed to fix it with? Whatever you can find, Dr. Yilan said, gesturing to scattered debris around the chamber. Broken components, spare parts that don't quite fit, materials that weren't designed for this purpose. The same kind of improvisation challenge that humans seem to excel at. The simulation began with alarms blaring and emergency lighting casting everything in red shadows. Sarah's first instinct was to assess the damage systematically, but the console showed problems everywhere. Power grid failures, atmospheric processor breakdowns. Navigation system crashes. Life support critical, announced the computer in a cheerfully neutral voice that somehow made the situation more unsettling. Oxygen depletion in 4 hours, 37 minutes. Sarah began gathering components from around the chamber. A damaged plasma coupling from a weapon system, some fiber optic cables from a communications array, a power cell from what looked like a personal entertainment device. None of these things belonged in a life support system, but that was apparently the point. Interesting, Quillis murmured, watching readouts on his private display. Her stress indicators are elevated, but not as much as in previous tests. She's becoming accustomed to impossible situations. That was exactly what Sarah was thinking. 3 weeks ago, the idea of jury-rigging life support systems would have terrified her. Now it felt like just another engineering challenge. She was beginning to understand how human soldiers must feel after multiple deployments, constantly expecting things to go wrong and developing an instinctive confidence in their ability to handle whatever came. Next, she rerouted power through the entertainment device's battery, using it as a buffer to stabilize the atmospheric processor's failing control circuits. It shouldn't work. The voltage requirements were completely different, but somehow the system accepted the improvised connection. Atmospheric processor online, the computer announced. Oxygen depletion in 6 hours, 12 minutes. Sarah had bought herself time, but the fundamental problems remained. The main power grid was still failing, and without it, the atmospheric processor would shut down again within the hour. She needed a more permanent solution. Looking around the chamber, she spotted something that made her smile grimly. A damaged artificial gravity generator lay partially buried under other debris. Gravity generators used massive amounts of power when operational, but their power cores were incredibly robust, designed to handle the exotic energies needed to manipulate spacetime. She's going to try something with the gravity generator, Dr. Yelan observed, monitoring Sarah's biometrics. Stress levels are actually decreasing as the challenge becomes more complex. Sarah began carefully disassembling the gravity generator's power core. The technology was far beyond anything she'd worked with before, but the principles were similar to other high-energy systems. Energy was energy, whether it came from fusion reactors or exotic matter containment fields. The tricky part was interfacing the gravity generator's power core with the ship's electrical grid. The connectors were incompatible, the voltage specifications were in different measurement systems, and the safety protocols were designed to prevent exactly the kind of cross-system integration she was attempting. But Sarah had learned something important over the past 3 weeks. When she stopped worrying about whether something should work and focused entirely on making it work, reality seemed willing to bend a little in her favor. She spliced connections that shouldn't have held, bridged incompatible systems with components that shouldn't have functioned as interfaces, and somehow convinced a gravity generator's power core to provide standard electrical current to a starship's life support grid. Main power restored, the computer announced, sounding surprised if a computer could sound surprised. All critical systems online, but Sarah wasn't finished. With main power restored, she could tackle the communication system. The original antenna array had been destroyed, but she'd noticed that the ship's hull plating could potentially function as a massive antenna if she could figure out how to tune it properly. What is she doing now? Quillis asked, watching Sarah begin to rewire sections of the ship's structural framework. I think, Dr. Yelan said slowly, she's turning the entire hull into a communications array. It took another hour of improvisation, using components that had no business working together and theories she was making up as she went along. But eventually, Sarah managed to establish communication with the outside world using the ship's hull as a giant antenna powered by jury-rigged gravity generator technology. This is Transport 7 calling any Alliance vessel, she said into the repaired communicator. We have restored life support and communications. Requesting assistance for proper repairs. The response came immediately. Transport 7, this is Rescue Ship Meridian. We copy your transmission. Stand by for assistance. The simulation ended, emergency lighting returning to normal. Sarah slumped against the console, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the test was wearing off, leaving her feeling drained. Remarkable, Quillis said, his mercury eyes reflecting something that might have been awe. She completed a scenario that should have required a full engineering team with specialized equipment. Dr. Yilan was staring at her readouts with an expression of mixed fascination and concern. Sarah, do you realize what you just did? You took a gravity generator, technology that most species consider borderline magical, and turned it into a backup power supply using nothing but intuition and improvised connections. Sarah looked around the chamber at her improvised repairs. Cables and components that shouldn't work together somehow formed a functioning system that had solved multiple critical problems. I saw how the pieces could fit together. It made sense at the time. That's exactly what worries us, Dr. Yilan said quietly. This shouldn't make sense to anyone. Gravity manipulation technology is centuries beyond human theoretical understanding, but you used it like it was a car battery. Quillis was examining the improvised connections with professional interest. The integration points show clear evidence of quantum probability manipulation. The connection interfaces were physically incompatible until the moment she joined them. Reality literally changed to accommodate her intentions. The implications of that statement hung heavy in the air. Sarah was beginning to understand why this research was classified. If humans could unconsciously alter reality to solve problems, what did that mean for the balance of power in the galaxy? There's something else, Dr. Yilan said, pulling up new data on her display. Your performance is improving rapidly. Each test shows greater probability manipulation effects and more complex problem-solving applications. It's as if the ability gets stronger with practice. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What are you saying? I'm saying, Dr. Yilan replied, that we may have only seen the beginning of what humans are capable of. The emergency klaxon woke Sarah from deep sleep at 3:47 station time. Emergency lighting bathed her quarters in pulsing red as she stumbled to her feet, muscle memory from weeks of training taking over. The intercom crackled to life before she could reach the door. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, all personnel to emergency stations. Sarah grabbed her gear and ran through corridors filled with rushing figures. Vakari security forces moved with military precision, while civilian staff looked confused and frightened. The emergency broadcasts continued in multiple languages, but one phrase kept repeating, unknown hostile contact. She found Dr. Yilan and Master Engineer Quillis in the research laboratory, frantically loading data into portable storage devices. Through the viewport, Sarah could see Alliance warships moving into defensive positions around the station. What's happening? Sarah asked. First contact scenario, Dr. Yilan replied without looking up from her console. A ship appeared at the edge of the system 20 minutes ago. Configuration unknown, technology unrecognized. It's not responding to communications and it's heading straight for us. Quillis looked up from his data transfer with an expression Sarah had never seen before. Fear. The ship's energy signatures are unlike anything in Alliance databases. It's possible we're encountering a completely new species. Or, Dr. Yilan added grimly, something that's been waiting for the right moment to make itself known. The station shuddered suddenly. A deep vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Emergency lighting flickered and several displays went dark before backup systems kicked in. What was that? Sarah asked. Long-range scan. Commander Zess's voice came over the intercom. All research personnel report to designated safe zones immediately. Military personnel to combat stations. Dr. Yilan grabbed Sarah's arm. You're coming with us to the command center. After what we've learned about human abilities, Command wants you available for consultation. They rushed through corridors that were now empty, except for armed security patrols. The command center was a chaos of activity, with officers from multiple species coordinating defensive preparations. Holographic displays showed the approaching ship, a sleek, angular vessel that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Status report, Dr. Yilan announced their arrival. Unknown vessel maintaining approach vector, reported a Thorani tactical officer. Her massive frame hunched over a targeting console. Estimated arrival in 43 minutes. All attempts at communication have been ignored. Commander Zess noticed Sarah and gestured her over to the main tactical display. Chen, I want you to look at this ship and tell me what you see. Sarah studied the holographic image. The vessel was larger than Alliance cruisers, but smaller than dreadnoughts. Its hull showed no obvious weapon ports, but that might not mean anything. More disturbing was the way space seemed to bend around it, creating visual distortions that hurt to look at directly. Sir, the ship appears to be manipulating space-time in ways I don't recognize. The distortion patterns suggest technology far beyond current Alliance capabilities. That's what our analysts concluded as well, Zess replied. But there's something else. Watch the approach pattern. The display showed the ship's trajectory over the past 30 minutes. Instead of following a straight line or standard military approach vectors, it was moving in what looked like a complex spiral pattern, weaving through space in a way that made no tactical sense. It's not approaching like a warship, Sarah observed. It's moving like it's testing something, probing. Probing for what? Asked the Thorani officer. Sarah felt that familiar sensation she'd learned to recognize over the past month, her mind working on a level she didn't fully understand, making connections that shouldn't be possible. It's looking for something specific. The spiral pattern isn't random, it's a search grid. Searching for what? Commander Zess demanded. Before Sarah could answer, the station's defensive sensors lit up with new contacts. 3 more ships materialized at different points around the system, all following similar spiral approach patterns. 4 ships now, reported communications. Same configuration, same energy signatures. Still no response to hails. Master Engineer Quillis had been quietly working at a side console. Now he looked up with an expression of growing alarm. Commander, I'm detecting quantum resonance patterns from all 4 ships. They're scanning for specific quantum signatures. What kind of signatures? Dr. Yilin asked, though her expression suggested she already suspected the answer. The same probability manipulation effects we've been documenting in human test subjects, Quillis replied quietly. The command center fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant vibration of the station's defensive systems powering up. Everyone was looking at Sarah now, and she felt the weight of their attention like a physical force. They're looking for me, she said, the words coming out before she could stop them. Or someone like me. Someone who can manipulate quantum probability. Commander Zess stepped closer. Explain. Sarah looked at the tactical display, watching the 4 ships methodically scan space around Kepler Station. If humans really do have this ability, we might not be the first species to develop it. Maybe these ships belong to a species that's been looking for others with the same capability. For what purpose? Asked Dr. Yilin. I don't know. But they've found us now. As if responding to her words, all 4 ships suddenly changed course, abandoning their search patterns and converging directly on Kepler Station. The spiral approaches became straight-line intercepts, and the ship's energy signatures spiked dramatically. All contacts accelerating, the tactical officer reported. Time to intercept now 16 minutes. Battle stations, Commander Zess ordered. All defensive systems online. Prepare for... His words were cut off as every communication system in the command center activated simultaneously. But instead of static or alien voices, what emerged was something far more unsettling. A perfect reproduction of Sarah's own voice. Sarah Chen of Earth, the transmission said, using her exact vocal patterns and speech rhythms. You have been detected. Compliance is required. Resistance will result in termination of this facility and all personnel. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Sarah stared at the communication console, her mind reeling. How could they know her voice? How could they reproduce it so perfectly? They've been monitoring us, Dr. Yilin whispered. Listening to our communications, studying our research. For how long? Commander Zess demanded. Quillis was working frantically at his console. Based on the quantum resonance patterns, I'd estimate they've been observing this system for at least 3 months. Possibly longer, 3 months. That meant they'd been watching since before Sarah's first test with the jammed rifle. They'd seen her develop her abilities, watched the research team document human probability manipulation, and waited for the right moment to reveal themselves. Options? Commander Zess asked his tactical staff. Unknown vessels are heavily shielded and show advanced propulsion systems, the Thorani officer reported. Our defensive capabilities are untested against their technology. Evacuation? Insufficient time to evacuate civilian personnel. Enemy ships will be in weapons range in 12 minutes. Sarah watched the tactical display, seeing the 4 ships converge on their position with mathematical precision. Whatever species these belonged to, they were clearly far more advanced than the Alliance. In a straight fight, Kepler Station wouldn't last 5 minutes. There might be another option, she said quietly. All eyes turned to her again. Commander Zess raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. They want me specifically. They know about human probability manipulation abilities. What if I gave them what they wanted? Absolutely not, Dr. Yilan said immediately. We don't know their intentions. You could be walking into a trap. We're already in a trap, Sarah pointed out. At least this way the station and everyone on it might survive. And if they simply take you and then destroy the station anyway? Quillis asked. Sarah looked around the command center at the faces of beings from half a dozen species, all watching her with expressions ranging from fear to hope. Then at least we'll have tried something other than shooting at ships we can't hurt with weapons we can't afford to lose. Commander Zess was quiet for a long moment, weighing options that all seemed to lead to disaster. Finally he nodded. Open a channel to the lead ship. Channel open, sir. Sarah stepped forward to the communication console, her heart hammering. She had no idea what she was going to say to beings advanced enough to cross interstellar distances just to find her. This is Sarah Chen, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm willing to discuss terms, but I want guarantees that this station and its personnel will not be harmed. The response came immediately, still in her own voice. Acceptable. Prepare for transport. Come alone. Light began to fill the command center, not from any visible source, but seeming to emerge from the air itself. Sarah felt a tingling sensation as exotic energies played across her skin. Sarah, Dr. Yilan called out, but her voice seemed to be coming from very far away. The last thing Sarah saw before the light consumed everything was the tactical display showing 4 impossible ships surrounding Kepler Station. Sarah materialized in a space that defied easy description. The walls seemed to be made of flowing liquid metal that occasionally became transparent, revealing starfields that shifted and changed with each glance. The floor felt solid beneath her feet, but when she looked down, she saw depths that seemed to extend infinitely into darkness. Welcome, Sarah Chen of Earth. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, still using her own vocal patterns but somehow layered with harmonics that suggested vast intelligence. A figure began to coalesce from the flowing walls, humanoid in basic shape but clearly not human. Its skin was the same liquid metal as the walls, constantly shifting between mirror brightness and transparency. What are you? Sarah asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. We are the architects, the being replied. We shaped this galaxy long before your species discovered fire. We have been searching for others like us for millennia. Others like you? The architect's form solidified slightly, becoming more human-like in proportions while retaining its metallic fluidity. Others who can touch the fundamental structure of reality, who can convince the universe to bend to their will through force of necessity. Sarah backed against what she hoped was a wall, though the surface yielded slightly under pressure like liquid. The probability manipulation. You can do it too. We were the first, the architect confirmed. Our entire civilization was built on the ability to reshape quantum probability fields. We became masters of reality itself, able to create matter from energy, to travel between stars by convincing space that distance was negotiable. Then why do you need humans? The architect's form flickered, and for a moment Sarah caught a glimpse of something vast and ancient beneath the humanoid facade. Because we made a mistake. We became too powerful, too removed from the physical constraints that originally shaped our abilities. We lost something essential. The space around them shifted, walls becoming transparent to reveal the galaxy spread out in all directions. But something was wrong with the view. Stars were moving too fast, galaxies were colliding and separating like bubbles in champagne. We broke time, the architect said simply. In our attempts to master every aspect of reality, we created temporal paradoxes that threaten the very existence of this universe. We need someone with fresh perspective, someone whose abilities are still bound by intuitive understanding rather than calculated manipulation. Sarah stared at the chaotic star field around them. You want me to help you fix the universe? We want you to help us understand how to use our abilities without destroying everything we touch. Your species approaches probability manipulation instinctively, solving problems through necessity rather than design. That intuitive connection to quantum fields may be the key to stabilizing the temporal damage we have caused. The walls shifted again, showing Sarah images of human history, wars, disasters, moments of desperate improvisation, where humans had somehow triumphed against impossible odds. She saw soldiers making weapons from broken equipment, scientists solving problems with theories they invented on the spot, ordinary people doing extraordinary things when survival was at stake. You've been watching us for a long time, she observed, since your species first developed the ability to manipulate simple tools. We recognized the potential immediately, the same desperate creativity that allowed our own species to transcend physical limitations. But humans retained something we lost, the ability to know when to stop. And if I refuse to help? The architect's form became more solid, more threatening. Then we will continue our attempts to repair the damage alone. The probability of success is approximately 12%. The probability of complete universal collapse is 83%. Sarah felt that familiar sensation of her mind working on levels she didn't fully understand, processing information and making connections that should have been impossible. But this time the sensation was different, stronger, more focused. Being in this space, surrounded by beings who manipulated reality as easily as she manipulated tools, seemed to be enhancing her own abilities. "Show me," she said. "Show me exactly what you broke and how you broke it." The space around them transformed into something that made her brain hurt to perceive. She saw time flowing backward and forward simultaneously, causal loops that folded in on themselves, probability cascades that created realities where fundamental constants changed randomly. "We attempted to create a perfect universe," the architect explained, "one where entropy could be reversed, where death was optional, where every possible positive outcome occurred simultaneously. The quantum calculations required to maintain such a state proved unstable." Sarah studied the impossible geometries of broken spacetime around her. The damage was extensive, but it wasn't random. There were patterns, places where the temporal fractures followed predictable lines of force. "You're approaching this like engineers," she said suddenly, calculating optimal outcomes and trying to force reality to match your equations. But probability doesn't work that way. It's organic, intuitive. You can't solve this with math. "Then how do you propose we proceed?" Sarah looked around at the fractured reality surrounding them, feeling the weight of responsibility for the entire universe settling on her shoulders. But instead of being overwhelmed, she felt something else. The same calm focus that had allowed her to repair a broken rifle under impossible conditions. "The same way I fixed that plasma rifle," she said, "by working with the system instead of against it. By letting the universe tell me what it wants to do instead of trying to force it into unnatural configurations." She reached out with senses she was only beginning to understand, feeling the quantum probability fields that surrounded them. The damage was extensive, but the universe was trying to heal itself. The architect's continued interventions were preventing that natural healing process. "You need to stop," she said firmly. "All of you. Stop trying to fix this and let the universe repair itself. The damage is too extensive. Without intervention, the universe will do what it's been trying to do for however long you've been interfering with it. The quantum fields want to stabilize. They're designed to find equilibrium. But every time you try to help, you're creating new instabilities." Sarah could feel the probability flows around her, could sense the delicate balance of forces that kept reality functioning. The architect's well-intentioned repairs were like trying to fix a spiderweb with a hammer. Each intervention caused more damage than it prevented. "Trust me," she said, reaching deeper into the quantum substrate of reality. "Trust the universe to know how to heal itself." For a moment that stretched into eternity, Sarah felt her consciousness expand beyond her physical form. She became aware of the vast network of probability that underlay all existence, the delicate dance of quantum uncertainty that allowed reality to function, and she saw what needed to be done. Instead of imposing her will on the quantum fields, she simply stepped aside. She convinced the architect's ongoing repair attempts to pause, creating a moment of stillness in which the universe's natural healing processes could finally assert themselves. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The chaotic star fields outside stabilized, time resumed its normal flow, and the fractured geometries of broken spacetime began to smooth themselves into configurations that made sense again. "Remarkable," the architect whispered, its form becoming more stable as reality reasserted itself around them. "You accomplished in moments what we have been attempting for millennia." Sarah smiled, feeling exhausted but oddly satisfied. Sometimes the best way to fix something is to get out of its way and let it fix itself. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the construction of something that would have been impossible to imagine before her encounter with the architects. The new facility being built in the asteroid field looked like a cross between a research station and a temple. Its flowing architecture clearly influenced by architect design principles but built with Alliance technology. The Probability Research Institute, Dr. Yilan said, joining her at the viewport. I still can't believe they approved the funding, Sarah smiled. After the architects shared some of their non-temporally dangerous technology with the Alliance Council, funding became much easier to secure. The past 3 months had changed everything. The architects, freed from their obsession with repairing temporal damage, had proven to be valuable allies rather than mysterious threats. Their understanding of advanced physics, combined with humanity's intuitive approach to problem-solving, was revolutionizing technology throughout the Alliance. How are the new recruits doing? Sarah asked. Better than expected. We've identified 47 humans with measurable probability manipulation abilities, and the numbers keep growing. Apparently, the trait becomes more common when people know it's possible. That had been one of the most surprising discoveries. Human probability manipulation wasn't rare, it was suppressed. Once people understood that they could influence quantum outcomes through focused intention during high-stress situations, the ability began manifesting throughout the human population. And the other species? Dr. Yilan's expression became more thoughtful. That's where things get interesting. The Vakari have started showing similar abilities, but theirs manifest as enhanced precision and timing. The Thorani are developing something that looks like controlled berserker states where they can temporarily ignore physical limitations. Each species expressing the ability differently? Exactly. The architects think it's related to evolutionary pressure and cultural development. Humans developed broad adaptability because we faced diverse challenges. Other species developed more specialized approaches because their environments were more consistent. Sarah nodded, remembering conversations with the architect who had become their primary liaison. The being had explained that probability manipulation was actually a fundamental capability of conscious minds, suppressed in most species by cultural conditioning that insisted reality was fixed and unchangeable. Commander Zess wants to see you in his office, Dr. Yilan said. Something about a new assignment. Sarah found Commander Zess in his office, studying holographic reports with his usual intense focus. The past months had been good to him. The successful first contact with the architects had earned him a promotion and recognition throughout the Alliance military. Chen, he said as she entered. How would you feel about a field assignment? What kind of field assignment, sir? Zess activated a holographic display showing a star chart of the galactic rim. Long-range exploration. We're putting together teams of humans with probability manipulation abilities to explore regions that have been inaccessible due to various hazards. Unstable wormholes, quantum storm systems, areas where conventional navigation fails. Sarah studied the star chart, noting the vast regions marked with warning symbols. You want to use human adaptability to explore dangerous space. The architects have provided us with ship designs that can survive in unstable quantum environments, but they still require conscious guidance from beings who can manipulate probability fields. Standard AI systems can't adapt to constantly changing physics. And you think humans are the best choice for this? Commander Zess smiled, showing those sharp teeth that had once seemed threatening but now looked almost friendly. I think humans are the only choice for this. The Vakari are too methodical for rapid adaptation. The Thorani are too direct. The Kellish are too patient. Only humans have the right combination of intuition, adaptability, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept that something is impossible. Sarah looked at the unexplored regions on the star chart, thinking about all the mysteries waiting to be discovered. When do we leave? Your ship launches in 2 weeks. The ISV Probability, an architect-designed vessel with Alliance crew and human navigation specialists. Your mission is to map the Quantum Storms region and establish contact with any civilizations you encounter. Any civilizations? The architects believe there may be other species with probability manipulation abilities in the unexplored regions. Species that developed along different evolutionary paths but arrived at similar capabilities. Your job is to find them and determine whether they're potential allies or threats. Sarah felt that familiar sensation of possibility opening up before her. The same feeling she'd had when faced with a broken rifle and impossible odds. What's the crew composition? 12 humans with documented probability manipulation abilities, 6 Vakari technical specialists, 4 Thorani security personnel, and 2 architect observers. You'll be the senior human aboard and primary navigation specialist. Senior human? You're getting a promotion, Chen. Congratulations. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, Alliance Exploration Service. Sarah stared at the rank insignia Zess handed her, still processing the magnitude of what he was proposing. 6 months ago, she'd been a recruit struggling to prove humans belonged in the galactic community. Now she was being asked to lead expeditions into uncharted space, using abilities that most species still considered impossible. There's one more thing, Zess said, his expression becoming more serious. The probability will be the first ship equipped with quantum probability stabilizers, technology derived from architect systems, but designed for conscious control by human operators. Essentially, you'll be able to extend your natural abilities to affect the ship's entire quantum field. What does that mean in practical terms? It means you might be able to make a starship lucky, convince hostile environments to be a little less hostile, persuade malfunctioning systems to work a little longer, encourage dangerous situations to resolve in your favor. Sarah thought about her father's old advice about the universe not caring about your plans. And if we encounter something too dangerous even for enhanced probability manipulation? Then you'll do what humans have always done, Zess replied. You'll improvise, adapt, and find a way to turn disaster into opportunity. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood on the bridge of the ISV Probability as it prepared to depart Kepler Station. The ship was a marvel of combined architect and alliance technology, its hull seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal, while its interior maintained familiar alliance design principles. All systems green, reported Lieutenant Martinez, one of the human probability specialists who would be working with the ship's quantum navigation systems. Architect observers report nominal probability field coherence. Sarah looked out at the star field ahead, knowing that they were about to venture into regions where the normal rules of physics might not apply. But instead of fear, she felt excitement. This was what humans were meant to do: push boundaries, explore the unknown, and find ways to thrive in environments that should be impossible to survive. "Take us out," she ordered. "Let's go see what's waiting for us out there." As the probability engaged its quantum drive and slipped into the swirling energies of unexplored space, Sarah thought about the broken rifle that had started everything. Someone had handed her a weapon that shouldn't work, expecting her to fail. Instead, she'd found a way to make it function beyond its theoretical limits. Now the universe was handing her an entire ship and crew, along with mysteries that might challenge everything anyone thought they knew about reality. She smiled, feeling that familiar calm confidence settling over her. Time to show the galaxy what humans could really do when someone handed them the impossible.